Let's have a look at the EShooter app. I'm using this on an Android phone. For me, there is no real issues using the app and it has a lot of great features. First, there are 3 main tabs including dashboard, settings, and sensor. The sensor tab, we already went through on Mosfet install. For dashboard, you have key summary information, including a BB counter, rate of fire, trigger response, chip temperature, current, voltage, power up time, and version. What I see missing is a diagnostics tab. If it can save and report errors, then a diagnostics tab to view the errors text would be great to have. The settings tab is the most important for tuning and adjusting your gun once the Mosfet is installed. Numerous selector modes including safe, semi, auto, burst, AUG, binary, and sniper, any of which can be set to both a semi or auto selector position. Burst can be set from 3 to 10 rounds. There are 5 trigger sensitivity setting options. All were available from my trigger and gearbox combination. This Mosfet does have precocking, which can be turned on or off. There's a further setting to go from low to high to help tune it. Rate of fire control can be off at 0% or go from 50 to 100%. There is a 30 round magazine mode, which relies on the physical switch you may have noticed upon Mosfet installation. The switch will detect a mag change and reset the Mosfet to allow 30 more rounds fired. Gear ratios currently available are 18:1, 13:1, and DSG. If you change your gears, be sure to read the warning and recalibrate the sensors. Note the brushless motors are not currently supported by this Mosfet, but I've asked the question. There's also a Lipo or Lipo discharge protection mode. As I understand it from EShooter, it cuts off at 30%. I think a custom voltage setting would be nice. I tested this and discharged my battery until the Kestrel stopped firing. It effectively cut my power at a 3.3 volt reading per cell. The app reported about 20 or 25% power, but it would have been an instantaneous down draw that caused that, and it did cut at the intended 3.3 volts. For the firing test, I'm using an 11.1 volt Lipo battery with an 18:1 gear ratio, and I also have the G&G 25K IFRIT motor installed. I wanted to test the trigger sensitivity to see how much it really improved. I noticed it took about half of the trigger pull length off by going from a setting of 5 to 1, which is the most sensitive. With the standard trigger, travel varied from about 11mm to 5mm throughout all settings. It is normal if some of the sensors are covered by your trigger during installation. This means all the sensor settings may not be usable. With a flat adjustable trigger, you can most likely tune this down to 1 to 2mm if you want to. I went through all the firing modes to see how they responded. When I went back to semi-auto after doing a round of full auto, I noticed the first shot sometimes double fired. I think this is part of the active brake inconsistency in full auto mode, which leaves the piston essentially pre-cocked on the auto occasion. I will show this in more detail later on. With burst mode, I've tested all the burst settings from 3 to 10, they all worked and counted the cycle perfectly. AUG mode's pretty cool and worked as expected. There's a sniper delay mode setting, and it's set to release only. It'd be nice to have it as either release or some set delay time. This Mosfet does have active braking, however it's not adjustable and there's no setting found in the menu to tune it. I found in semi-auto, the piston would be in neutral with the pre-cocking mode off. I even had a look with the upper receiver off, and I noticed the piston would be in the rested position after every shot. As you can see in full auto, the active brake is not perfect in picking up the cycle and may sometimes leave the piston partially engaged or essentially in a pre-cocked position. The piston is set as such it may engage in a double fire shot the first time you swap to semi. It was a big hit or miss in full auto, and in reality if you're doing regular full auto you probably don't want to use active brake anyways. I checked the rate of fire settings from 100% to 50% and it did make a notable difference. This can be useful if you're installing this in an LMG or SMG platform where full auto is typically allowed. I also tested out all the precocking settings, but I was limited to the 18:1 gear setting. With precocking mode on, I found the overall delay to be much improved and the gun felt a lot more responsive as it should. I did notice the odd double fire when first engaging precocking, and this is probably just as the Mosfet gets the cycle set right for precocking. Checked visually how the piston sat when precocking was on, see that it did make the most notable improvement when set on high, the piston drawn about 3/4 of the way back. When running a session with precocking on high, it seemed to work with much improved response and no double feeding issues. For gear ratios, they have standard gears, 18:1, high-speed gears, 13:1, and DSG gear settings. If you change your gear ratio, be sure to read the warning. It asks you to recalibrate the selector plate detection and to make sure the gears are compatible with what you installed in your gearbox. One thing to note, currently for DSG gear selection, precocking mode is not available. A friend of mine has tested the Kestrel V2 and his 8-tooth DSG. He found he can get appropriate cycling and compatibility in his high-speed build. For higher speed builds or DSGs, they may benefit from additional tuning options for active brake, such as percentage-based mode rather than just on and off. Now unfortunately, I cannot test the 30 round mag mode since the switch broke off the board for me. This mode relies on the switch being installed. Actually, firing the Mosfet in this mode also does too, and without the switch, the gun won't even fire in any mode, semi or auto, if the 30 round mag is set to on and you don't have the switch installed. If you remove the switch, or if it just doesn't work for you, make sure you leave this mode off. If you go back to the dashboard, you can see some of the readings received during the round of firing in various different modes. Finally, here's some Chrono results based on some of the same trigger settings to end off this video.